And welcome, sacred beings, sacred souls. Welcome to Sacred HERstory podcast. I am your host, Jennifer Natasia. And today, for our Sacred HERstory guest speaker, we have this incredible woman, Rohne, who is a silent emotional crisis expert, a courage coach, author, and speaker. Welcome, Rohne. Welcome to Sacred Her.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. I'm just so grateful to you, and things just sometimes just happens. And what do? You pivot, you keep going, right?
Yeah, we live in a fast-moving technological world, so
Yeah,
for
we
that,
do. We do, but it's so important to slow down too, right? Wouldn't you
of
agree?
course.
So tell us, what is a silent emotional crisis expert? I have never heard that term except through you.
Yes, and I'm really happy you haven't heard it before because it is an original. I coined that term very recently in the past year, actually. So, what I mean by silent emotional crisis is the gap that one experiences between their organic, natural, true self and then the self that they had to become to survive their home, their environment, or the people in their life, or the various challenging situations in their life, who they had to become. Okay, who they had to become versus who they really are naturally as the person, as a human being. So there are two different things. So as this gap, at some point, maybe because something happened or maybe for certain reasons, a gap is created between these two, and then it just keeps widening over a period of time. And at some point, a person might break down, have a breakdown, and or it becomes really challenging, and they just live, but I mean they just exist, but they're not really living a life. They're just really emotionally like bankrupt or in complete pain and misery on the inside, while performing to be a successful, happy person on the outside. That is what I call silent emotional crisis. And the reason I chose this as my specialty is because I was in that state probably since childhood. And again, I didn't have the language for it. I didn't have anything like protocols or things that I could use to understand what was happening to me as a child, as a young adult, and growing up in India. You're just told what to do. So I had a very conventional life. So it's decades of this experience that I have gone through myself. And I was in high performing environments. I worked um, for almost 2 decades, global banking environments. And I kept seeing this. And again, when I was seeing this, when I was in that environment at that time, I didn't really know it, but because there is no language for it. So now, I've been coaching for a decade with business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, all sorts of people, Instagram or, influencers, and a variety of people. And in the past decade, with my coaching experience, the same, patterns kept showing up. And there is no language. So finally, I was, writing a book this past year. And then it just came to me one day that I just wanted to call it this.
Wow,
The
incredible.
story behind it. Yeah.
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And how many of us I love that you actually put a word to this thing, right? Where there wasn't really a word. How do you explain this and express this and share this? So, can you share like a bit of your background? Because you did say you've you've been experienced this for decades, growing up with it. So, did
Yes.
you ever, yeah, like what experience did you go through? Did you ever thought you would be doing something like this in coaching? And yeah.
Sure, definitely. So I grew up in India for the first 2 decades and early 20s. I moved to US. And in India pretty much very conventional life. Basically, like my parents told me what to do, what to study. They chose it for me. Uh,
Mhm.
okay, become an engineer, and that's what I did. And while and again by early 20s, I was doing, but I was also trying to figure out, okay, I'm not happy being an engineer. What do I want to do? Like figuring things out on like the side. I did my MBA in human resources, got a job. I was working and studying and things like that. Very conventional life, like getting married and then moving to US and things like that. And again, as I said, I have been in corporate tech world for a long time. But as these were happening, so there was this gap that was widening as well within me because of new environments, new relationships, new actually crisis situations. When I was in my late teens, there were difficult chapters within my life because of my father. We didn't know if he would live or die one night, and that really impacted me in my late teens. And as I continued and moved to US, there was something else going on with my brother's health, younger brother's health. So these were deeply personal, and also it's isolating when you don't have support. And I didn't really have support in my then husband or so my friends, because it is so unique. They have not experienced it, so it's very hard to have that proper support also. And growing up in India, at that time at least, therapy was not a word. Emotional health is not a word. Mental health, you are just, all you're doing is living a, it just go to a job, make money, do your basic stuff. So it was just that. But I am, as a person, even as a child, I was deeply curious. I used to ask uncomfortable questions.
Mm.
That was my specialty. I used to love having uncomfortable questions. Whenever I would see something, I would question it. Oh, why is this girl getting married at the age of 15? She's not even of legal age. I would ask all these uncomfortable questions, definitely making a lot of people uncomfortable, because I was just curious. I was courageous. I was direct. I was blunt to a certain extent, because I was just like, well, this is happening, it's a fact, I just want to know why. And
Right.
why are people being such fakes, or why are they lying? So all these things, it made my life in India very, very difficult, because when you have a so-called rebellious kid, or somebody who questions the status quo,
Mm.
you become the problem child in a way, asking all the wrong questions which shouldn't be asked. Why are you asking that? Because nobody wants to answer them or even face them. So growing up in India was very difficult for me as a young adult, as a teenager. And again, the difficult life situations, other people making choices for me, my parents just unilaterally, especially my father,
Mm.
who is like really narcissist. And also because culturally man has all the power in India, my
Mm.
mother had like no say in anything. So just being told what to do doesn't really work when you're getting an education, which the whole point of getting an education, at least what I thought, was to be able to make independent decisions without having to depend on anybody else. So there was a lot of conflict between between that cultural sort of compliance versus how I was naturally. So when I moved to US, I mean, I had my then husband. So it
Mhm.
was not so much about culture or anything, but there is a new family in the mix. There are new people, how they treat you. So there was all these other, and India has so many discriminatory culture layers, if I can call it. So I started kind of getting mistreated by a lot of people, and a lot of kind of discrimination started happening within the marriage and all these things. And again, as I was telling you earlier, my brother's health. There was this crisis, emotional crisis in my family, a biological family, which was conflicting again with all this other things, and I really had no support, so it didn't really fit well. And then I started distancing. See, the beauty of being in America for me was, it was just like isolating in a good way, because what happens is, in isolation, there's nowhere to hide. Like, it was me and my then husband, and it's just either you face it and you deal with it and you make it work, or there is nothing else going on here. Like, there are no relatives or parents involved to, like, how do I say it, to soften the sharpness or the difficulties of life. So it's just like acute experiences which are very unpleasant. So I got very quickly, within 3 years, my marriage fell apart. And I realized, yeah, this person who was supposed to be my partner wasn't really a partner. If anything, I was his caretaker, and that's the expectation of most Indian women. Take care of our son, cook for him, clean for him, make sure he's good. That wasn't really working for me very well, so I chose
Right.
to.
A curious child that grew up.
Exactly, he's a full grown man child. Now he's your responsibility. um, yeah, it's just like, so many bullshit things in India are normalized. Like,
Mm,
not bullshit, not, I wouldn't even call them bullshit, probably. I think so many abnormal things are normalized in India. So I think it gave me like that space to say, like, yeah, this ain't gonna work for me. And then, very quickly I took this very hard decisions. And to be honest, because I was so radical in my approach and my decisions from a very young age. Like, for example, the norm when I was in my early 20s was arranged marriage. All of my girlfriends and guy friends, they had an arranged marriage. I was the only one who chose whom she wanted to marry, which was like radical at that time, against a lot of conflict. So things like that. But again, you choose somebody, and then within 3 years you want to divorce them. That is even more like, they're like, what? You, like, my parents were like, you made this bed, sleep in it. I'm like, no, I don't want to, suffer for the rest of my life. I
right.
mean, no. So they isolated me. There was no support. And I was like, that's all right. I will do this on my own. I own my mistakes. I was really good at, like, you know what? If this is a mistake, I will own it. Like, even if it's a mistake, it's my mistake. It's not somebody else's decision for me. So I think there was always that, organically, as a person, I was very courageous. So that kept me going till a certain time, because life on the inside was very painful, especially as a human being. We all need compassion, we need love, support, and none of those things were there in my life. By
Mm,
the time I was 33, I was like divorced for a year. On the outside, I was like doing the best in my career. I think at that point, I was really successful at work, loved, doing great projects. I was traveling the world, amazing stuff. But on the inside, I was totally bankrupt. And then there was this just a situation that happened with me where I unexpectedly got pregnant. And then I was like, okay, this was, it just happened. And then I had to take a decision. And as alone I was in the situation, I didn't want to bring life in a already messed up situation. So I decided not to, kind of very quickly, I decided not to go forth with the pregnancy. And that was a very practical, logical decision. But
yeah.
the aftermath was a little bit more intense for me. Like, the emotional aftermath was nothing that I had ever experienced. And I think that was the last, like, nail in my coffin, because layers and layers upon family crisis and emotional drama and emotional pain and suffering was just too much for me. I
Mm,
reached a point, I was like, okay, you know what, literally I would be like, hey, I wasn't a good daughter. I wasn't a good sister. I wasn't a good wife. I wasn't a good woman, and this mother sort of role, which I'd never really even thought about it for even like a day, had unexpectedly shown up and had like, yeah, no. So I was like, who am I? What am I? So I'm not even like a woman, like, all this sort of roles that a woman is told she is, this is the reason you are born.
Yeah, right. That society has put on us to show
Yeah.
up a certain way. And wow, that's a lot that you went through, Roan. And then to internalize it on your own and not have that support after the divorce, you know, and and the sorry, I'm one more thing. Just when you were sharing about how like you chose your partner, that 3 years it ended, we
Yeah.
have the right to change our minds, right? If it's not aligned, it is not aligned anymore, right?
See, it is right, but culturally, the way I grew up in India, and I was in that cultural conditioning till 33 years of age, completely, soaked, like marinated in that
Mm,
conditioning. Because
mm,
as a Indian woman, you have no choice. That is what
mm,
you're told. You have to just obey your parents, and to be more precise, your father, till you are in his house, because the mother literally has no say or any rights. So you have to obey your father until you're in his house, and then you get married off, and then the control transfers from, it's almost like the father goes like, here's son-in-law, here's the control, remote control to her. The control transfers to the husband and his family, not just the husband, his family as well. It's like a
wow.
group control, which is totally, as I
Okay.
was telling you earlier, these are very abnormal things to treat a woman purely like property and transfer control. So you have no choice. So you think you have no choice.
Wow. And so moving forward, you ended up getting pregnant and then went through that whole emotion. Well, went through your divorce, isolated, went
Yeah.
through this, with the choice you had with the pregnancy, isolated by yourself.
Yes.
So you're internalizing all this emotion. I'm hearing you say like, "Oh, I'm not good, a good wife, a good daughter, a good sister," and it's like, but you're dealing with all this stuff. So so moving forward, how did you get out of that? Because right now, the woman I'm talking to is just confident, insightful, has a huge heart in helping other people. So how did you kind of came out from that and all this heaviness?
Grace. I mean, if there is one word I will use, and I don't think I had even used or understood the meaning of that word, grace. And there's a little bit of a more explanatory story behind it.
Yeah.
There was a week when I was planning to execute taking my own life, because I was just at a point emotionally where I was like, you know what, I'm out. That was another practical thing I could control. I was like, you know
Okay.
what? I'm done. I'm so done. What's the point of living? And, for me, I had always asked the bigger questions that, I don't know, at least the people around me never seemed to be bothered or asked anybody or discussed. Like, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? I mean, why, like, if some bad family crisis is happening, why is it happening to me? What did I do? Or, how are we supposed to deal with it? This, it's drowning in that pain and misery. It was unbearable
Mm,
after years of it, something that started in late teens, right? And it was like, decades of it. One, you just, the hits kept coming, and I was like, I'm checking out, I'm done, so there was this week when I was like, I had everything planned out and I was going to execute, taking myself out. Um, so my emotional state was in a very dark place, right? I was just like completely depressed, ready to execute myself, very dark place. And I'm on one end of the spectrum of this darkness that I'm feeling. And then suddenly, one evening after I had come back from work, I just started feeling like so like joyous. I mean, I was talking to a friend on the phone, and he said something like, "Oh, don't talk to me about all this stuff, or the spiritual." And the word spiritual didn't exist in my dictionary at all.
Mm,
And I don't know what happened. Something shifted, or something got unscrewed. I don't know what happened, because see, growing up in India, I wouldn't say I was like super religious. My mother did the rituals. My father was kind of agnostic. He didn't care, he just participated. So there was never really like crux of the religion taught to me or anything. So I would say like superficially ritualistic maybe as a Hindu. So, and when I was struggling in US, I remember I'd met a really nice youth pastor couple, and she was one of the kindest women I've ever met, and she still is in my life. Um, I had explored Christianity. I had like, oh, I'll become a Christian because I think I just wanted to be like her. I just felt seen, heard in her presence, and she was just super empathetic. So I would say I had explored all of these things, but nothing had helped me deeply on a deeper level of what I was seeking answers for. You know, so I was very like very teachable, very open. So I would try anything anybody said. Um, at that point, so I was doing that, and then one end of the spectrum I'm feeling like that, and then this my friend says something. I'm like, what is spiritual? I know religion, but what is spiritual? I
mm,
didn't understand. And I didn't like really bother about it. But that evening or something, I was just sitting, and then I started having this bodily sensations. There was itching all over my body, all the way from here on the top of my head. There was itching. I was just like, I literally can go back and feel like it was almost like a skin shedding experience. But like, how you see like, I don't know if you've seen the snake's skin when it leaves behind. It was almost like it was like peeling off like that. Not peeling, but like just shedding. But it
right.
was very itchy. And then for some odd reason, I started feeling like the other end of the spectrum of my emotional experience, which was like I started feeling very joyous, very lighthearted. And I was like, nothing has changed externally. Like I was just sitting on the couch doing nothing, and then this something changed, and I'm like, how
Mm,
am I feeling happy? Wait, I have to kill myself. What is happening to me? I can't be feeling happy. Why am I feeling like this? A- and you have to understand, the mean voice in my head was like, okay, let's do it. Let's do this deed that we have planned, and in precision and everything. But suddenly, and at the same time, as a human being, there is a little bit of a fight, right? Like, no,
mm,
maybe this is not the right decision. But that evening, there is a whisper which is like, no, it's okay. It's okay, it's a mistake. Everybody forgives, even God forgives. You don't have to kill yourself because you made a mistake. It's
yeah,
okay. But it's like the fight, but the stronger voice is going to win, right? So that's where I was. The stronger voice had won. I had decided to execute myself. But then the whisper also never really died down. But then when I started having this physical sensations, and the voices went away suddenly. There was no whisper, there is no mean voice. There is just like this overflowing sense of like happiness. And I was so confused, Jen. I was so confused. I got scared, because the reason I got scared was that I had not spoken to anybody. There had nothing different that had happened. Like
mhm,
there was nothing external that had caused that happiness. So, and I was not in a state to feel happy about any damn thing in my life. So I got scared of that lightheartedness that I was feeling, and also the physical sensations were quite intense. So I got really scared actually. I got really scared. And because I lived alone, I didn't really, as I told you, didn't have any support circle or anything. I remember calling a coworker, and she said, I don't know any, because my friend had used that spiritual. I'm like, do you know any spiritual person? She's like, I don't know any spiritual person. I was like, okay, fine. She gave me some religious people. I'm like, no, no, that's not what I need. Then I did what I do best, go to Google and find like, I just started describing my what I was experiencing, and I was like, some things came up, but then at the same time I was like, okay, there were all these videos about on YouTube about people talking about their different experiences or something. And I still, it just confused me because my experience was just very happy. It was just happiness that was scaring me. And then eventually I went to like Google and I said, I need like helpline, like I need to talk to somebody. Because I was planning on calling 911 if I couldn't reach anybody because I was just scared of, I thought I was having a psychotic break. So I was like, well, I need to admit myself if I'm having a psychotic break. So then when I googled, I got this nonprofit come up called as Assist, American Center for Spiritually Transformative Experiences. I was like, oh, something spiritual. So let me call this helpline number. And I called, it went to voicemail, but thankfully soon enough a lady called back. And I literally like, I just told her, like I verbally, like just pew. I just told her everything that I was experiencing leading up to, this current day, how I'm feeling happy and kind of like levitating in some emotional way. I was like, what's happening to me? Am I going mad? And like, after like 45 minutes of telling her all of what I was experiencing and how it was contrastingly different from 2 days ago and things like that, she was like, no, sweetie, you're experiencing a spiritual awakening. And she kind of helped me, gave me some tips and how to take care of myself.
Mm.
Thankfully, I was in a corporate job, in the banking job. And thankfully, my experience was very happy experience. And after, and it's been a decade since that experience, and I know today that there are so many variations of an awakening. I mean, for some people it's pleasant, for some people it's not pleasant, it's very ugly. If there are 8 billion people, there are 8 billion ways of waking up, just like how anybody would wake up in the morning. I don't wake up the same way as you wake up. So she did kind of, she quickly realized I was isolated, I was like living alone. So she actually went out of her way and supported me, like, she would call me every 10 days and check in on me. So I had that kind of support. um, Now looking back, that experience was my spiritual awakening. And I actually was on that really high bliss state for about year and a half. It was amazing. I mean, I just kind of went into integration mode, but it was really amazing. And that is what, like, in a split second, God's grace is what I say. In a moment of grace, I woke up, my whole, I remembered or realized my true nature, that I'm a spirit. And this body and everything is just a temporary experience. This human experience is temporary. I'm a spirit having a human experience. So once I realized that, and because I was in such high states of happiness, the integration process, which followed for many years, and I guess it will continue forever till I die. It's been good. I mean, on the very good, on much of the good side, because it's like a happy incident.
That's incredible. I'm curious, what was it that your friend said on the phone that did he feel like a trigger or like what was it? I'm so curious. What did he said that just made you go through this that what's the word activated? It seemed like there was like an activation in that conversation.
Yeah, I have also gone back many times, and I know that person, my friend, right? Like, like I know his personality. He is not a spiritual person. He's very much, a regular person. He's not even, if anything, again, like me, he was like, he's probably, just practicing Hindu religion based on whatever his parents have told him or something. He doesn't have any definite, he himself says I'm not a spiritual person because he hasn't just understood his true nature, which is fine. But I have gone back and said, what triggered it, what just like, activated that, my remembrance, if anything. But I think I was the one who was like, because
Mm.
of everything in my life. I was telling him,
I love
oh,
it.
life is just full of changes. There is no permanence. And, even with people, even with situation, everything is always change. So I was talking about change because I was, my change intensity, the intensity of change, the number of changes I was experiencing was so intense and so rapid. And, uh, I had no option but to keep confronting, keep facing that uncomfortable truths and conversations I so liked as a child and young adult. It was fun then, but when there is at stake, when, oh, now this is gonna break my marriage, I have to divorce him, like when there are consequences, right? Then it really, your life changes, right? Your whole perspective, what you thought. So I think I was just talking about, oh, I thought this would be like that, and now this is so, just the reality of what I was experiencing, of how much change was like. I think maybe my description of probably whatever language I was using to describe the changes in my life. So I think for him, I don't know his point of view and his perspective, his dictionary that much, but I think whatever I was saying, maybe he was like, oh, she's being preachy, she's talking like some spiritual person, which I don't want to listen to anyway. So he was actually trying to cut me off, or don't talk to me about all the spiritual stuff, I'm not interested. Like, he was actually trying to cut me off the way I was talking. He was not interested.
Ah,
It was annoying him. But what stayed with me was, if you call me a religious person, I take it. Yeah, I've, experimented with a couple of religions. Sure, it wouldn't have bothered me. But the word spirituality didn't exist, so it bothered me. I was like, what does it even mean? I was just curious. Because, see, I understand if somebody is religious, I understand what it means. But I
mhm.
didn't know what spiritual meant. And so I was like, what does this mean? And I think as I did that, I was Googling, I was like, wait a minute, who are all these people talking about anything? And that might have triggered a series of, I don't know, data points connecting in my consciousness. And when it's time, right? You wake up.
Right. Wow. Wow. So here you went through such a lot of transformations,
Yeah.
in your life. And then here now you went through this whole spiritual awakening, and now you coach other people. You're a courage coach, silent emotional crisis expert, author and speaker, and you wrote a book, the author of Realized, From Rock Bottom to Unconditional Love. Can you share about that?
Yes, it's actually a rather funny story now that I reflect on it, like this past decade,
Mhm.
because I was very comfortable in my cushy job at the bank. Pays me well. I did enjoy the work. I had a lot of friends at work, like coworkers were good people. The culture of the company was great. I never really wanted to do anything more. And I was like happy. Like, I was like, cool, whatever happened, I'm very happy. So didn't want to help anybody else as much because I didn't think I had anything to help with. Because for the longest time, I thought to myself, like, okay, what happened to me was not a result of do this for 10 years and this is the result you will have, right? I didn't have a framework. I couldn't lead other people to that experience or that state of unconditional love I found myself.
Mm,
So it's like, what is that? I mean, what do I have that I can lead people? I didn't have that confidence, or I didn't think like I knew anything more about it to get to that state where I was at. So I kept quiet. I kept quiet. I was just like having a happy, I would just go to gatherings, retreats, enjoy. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to enjoy my life. I make good money, like nothing more. At some point, this is also the beauty when this is like, if you have been given the blessing of something, like in this instance, if you have been blessed with grace, and grace is always present. We have to wake up and see that, oh my God, grace is all around. We just had to realize it. So, but when you realize grace, when you experience grace at that level and your eyes are open, I
Mhm.
think there is more to be done. You're going to be used now. You're not just going to be like, yeah, I'll go live my little life. You're going to get pulled. And that's what happened in the last decade. So over a period of time,
Mhm.
I'm really good at synchronicities. Like I have a gift of following the breadcrumbs to see where they're leading. So if I'm being pulled, I'll be like, okay, something is telling me to go there. Let me follow that breadcrumb. So over the last decade, I had a friend who was like, hey, you got to, based on how I am or what I speak, they'll tell me something. Hey, you should go watch this documentary. I'm not your guru on Netflix about Tony Robbins. And I watch it. I'm like, okay, cool. I can learn these tools and maybe I can, use that parallelly. Like I had all the time in the world. I was by myself. Nothing else, nothing had changed, but I was just happy. So thankfully, and I had my job, but my weekends were free, my evenings were free. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Tony Robbins Institute. I'm going to become a life coach. 5 years I did that. While I was doing that, I was also like following the curiosity, then I got pulled into past life regression. I did that, I would just do like that for fun over the weekends. And I became a hypnotist. Like I learned all these various modalities. And in my early 20s, when I was trying to figure out the difficult challenges, I had done all like the whole pranic healing, which is also like Reiki, all levels. But
Mhm.
because I didn't have the experience, or, I just didn't connect with it on a spiritual level, I was still trying to do it on a mental level.
Mm.
So all these modalities from my early 20s, last 2 decades, have pulled me in, and I have gone even if I didn't understand it, right? I have to give credit where credit is due. But the last decade, what happened was it got very escalated. Okay, do hypnosis, do this, but I still wasn't like understanding because I had my job.
Mhm.
I was doing it for friends, I was doing it for anybody who asked me. I was doing it for free. I was sometimes, would, take donations or just like do for fun. But at the same time, and I also volunteered for SCORE, which is a nonprofit for business owners, because, Tony Robbins says business is 80% psychology and 20% strategy. So I would just go and volunteer and just coach people from the psychology point of view, because I got really good at identifying patterns. I was like, okay, this is the linchpin, and I'll pull it, and the whole house of card crumbles. So I did that for many years, but I always felt, Jen, that I originally didn't have that framework or something that I could take people to the point where I had reached unconditional love. I have observed, I don't think there is anything beyond unconditional love as a human experience in the body.
Mm.
And it was very hard. I was like, how do I, like, so I tried to hide behind, oh, I'm a Tony Robbins coach or I'm a hypnotist. I would open with that because I didn't think, and I didn't have the confidence. But what happened was, soon enough, I also wanted to write my book, right? Realized from the night I awakened. Because as a book lover, as a girl who had no role models as a kid, books were her only rescue, the library was her favorite place.
Mhm.
I wanted to tell my story for some girl out there in pain and misery so that she could read that book. And you would think, how difficult is it to write a memoir? Because it's about writing something that already happened about your life. But I kid you not, I couldn't write it. I sat multiple times over the decade, couldn't write it. I was like, okay, fine. If you don't want me to write, see, you also understand that now you're no longer XYZ, that you were born and that identification is not there. That night, I disidentified, there was a disconnect with my mind, with my body, right? And I realized that I'm just this spark of life.
Mm.
that lives here in this temporary shell for a little bit of time. So when that disidentification happens, you also have this very simple important realization that yes, you're here, you have to take care of your body and your mind, you have to get rid of all the gunk the world has filled you with. But at the same time, you also realize that you're here to do God's work because God created you. God is experiencing life as you, through you. So
Mm.
also, like, for example, I wanted to write that book, but I couldn't write it. It's not like I'm trying to invent the light bulb, but I couldn't write it. So I was very like puzzled by it. And I told, okay, you don't, maybe, then you're like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to write that book. Let it go. So I just let it go. But after 9 years, one day I joined a writing coaching program just for the fun. Let's see if something moves the needle without any expectations. Because after 9 years, I got pretty tired, and I'm like, okay, you know what? God doesn't want you to write this book. You're not, that God is not interested. So let it go. Big deal. Nobody wants to know your story. But after 9 years, as soon as I joined that writing group,
Mm.
3 months, I had the first draft
Ah,
ready. Yeah. And also, I'll tell you, the writing process, you can feel it that your only work is to get yourself out of the way, and then God's work will happen through you because the
mm.
time is right. So I always say Godspeed, God willing, and it's just God's timing. You are just waiting. Your whole work is just waiting to move when God wants you to move.
Oh, the waiting.
Yeah, so that's how I came to write the book. And it's out on Amazon now. It just came out a couple of months ago. That happened. And as I was writing, this is the last part of the question that you asked me. As I was writing this book, as I was telling you, I was doing all sorts of things, but I didn't have like this particular streamlined thing, which I was very confident calling myself or saying that, yeah, this is my authentic work and I can deliver results, because I always kept going back to my experience. And that is actually very selfish, because nobody else can have your experience, and you cannot guarantee people God's time.
Right.
When grace when they realize grace which already exists in their life, that timing, how could I ever think it was in my control? It can never be in any spiritual guru. If somebody's telling that I can tell you when, it's not run. So nobody can tell that. And I think that is where my confusion was. I thought I had to deliver that result, and I realized after a decade of helping people in various forms, I was like, you know what, I can. And as I took my clients to transformations as well, right, I got a variety of people, and what I was able to see when I analyzed the results of my clients, like what I was able to guide them with, was from going from like this ignorant unconscious life, working on their emotional patterns, right, because everything is tied to emotional, that first 7 years of conditioning. It's so many people get labeled for their thoughts, anxiety, and this and that. This is not a labeling, this is not a diagnosis. The silent emotional crisis is the experience of that disconnect that happens to us usually in childhood, and it continues on widening. So that is when I was like, you know what, I saw these transformations happening. And it's not that they go around saying I had a spiritual awakening. None of my clients do. But what they go on and say is, I'm completely new person, I'm transformed, I'm authentic,
Mm.
I live as me now, not who somebody told me to be. And especially I love working with entrepreneurs, which is most of the work that I do now. These women and men who get into the field of entrepreneurship is so courageous from the get-go, because they're doing something radical, like saying no to 9 to 5 job and diving into this. I'm a courageous person, so all of these courageous people are attracted to me, because then I'm like, okay, you are ready to do the work. As entrepreneurs, they're always, personal development is very intertwined with the paycheck that they earn with their freedom. So it's amazing, and I figured it out as I was writing. This is my gift, creating a safe space, helping them through these emotional patterns, identifying that, which truly turned out to, it took me a decade to get there though. This is what I'm like, is my best thing. I can do this like this.
Mm.
um that is my like unique selling point. That is my gift. And also like, choosing which group of people to work with, because then you can get those, they're invested in their own well-being, in their development. So that is what happened, and the silent emotional crisis also kind of emerged by write. It took me a year to not only write and publish the book, right? That whole process is when I kind of got that very, very like streamlined
Mm.
um, gift surface, like my superpowers. That is why I call myself today a silent emotional expert, because none of these things happened overnight. It's like it comes to the surface. So, and
Mhm.
it's been decades in the making.
Thank you for that, sharing that part, because a lot of us think that who we are today happened overnight. Like it does take a decision, but it also, there's a process of it all that we go through. And I love how you shared, like, yeah, I started writing, but it took 9 years for it to actually come out, right?
Yeah.
Like the experience of it, and so I really appreciate that from you, with you sharing. Also, because you said you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so any entrepreneurs who's listening, what kind of tools do you use to share with like a client of yours? What are some tools that you can share with our audience, you know,
Yeah,
in in their own development and their own like silent emotional crisis?
of course.
Yeah.
you know um as I said, entrepreneurs are so involved in their personal development, because it's actually tied to their income, their own growth. They know
Mhm.
there's no this 100% accountability for their actions. I love that about them. Because I've also worked with high achievers. Like I was in a bank job, but I also had to remind myself I've always been an exception. But being an outlier is different. I have always been very teachable, and I will go after chase something. But what happens is, a lot of them in like a bank or something, and I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I did when I was coaching people for free, volunteering for SCORE. A lot of these high performing individuals, leaders would come and say that, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur now, but they were not willing to do the work because their paycheck is not dependent on it. They still get that paycheck by the end of the month. So yet today, and so many entrepreneurs are there, like, from, they start so young. It's amazing. Sometimes they start so young, and one of the easy things to do is start understanding the environment you are in. That is the first and foremost. A lot of times we just assume a lot of things. My parents are the best. My parents want the best for me, and I'm not saying it is not the case always, but in so many cases it is not also the, the assumption is not accurate.
Mhm.
So that discernment is huge. And so start developing discernment, not judgment, but discerning the
Mhm.
closest people. And I give them three areas. Start discerning people. Number one category is their own family members, parents, siblings. The second category is their spouse, and the third category for a lot of entrepreneurs is also their business partners. Jen, I'll ask you a simple question. If you're out, let's say in a library, and a random person makes some comment, is that going to hurt you deeply?
No.
No, because you don't know that person, right? It's not going to impact your life. Yeah, it might spoil your mood for a couple of minutes if you allow it to, but your life goes on. But look at these three category of people: your family members, your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, and a business partner, because a lot of businesses have partners. These people, if you choose toxic, or if you entertain the dysfunction, the toxicity, or if their intentions are not good, we assume our parents have the best assumption. Test out if your assumption is right. Find out if your parents really have the best interest. So anyway, it comes from a lot of personal experience as well. So these are the three categories I will tell people to discern and see if they are safe people for them, because you want your environment to be a safe space for you first, right? Then you can do amazing things. Otherwise, everything is gonna pull you back, is going to just poison the pond. So that is one, right? Identify your environments, discern if these people are your safe people for you. And the second one is also like, you have to understand, or like realize, or at least there is so much proof out there today, right? Where you can even have the experience, but at least even scientifically there is so much proof out there to know your true nature, human beings true nature. What is it? Go watch a documentary, go have a hypnosis session. There are so many methods which gives you that little space, and then the trance can end. Have a transcendental experience. It doesn't always have to be on like out of the blue, and it hit me in the face. Go, there are tools out there in today's world that can pull you out of the trance, and that's enough. Then you at least realize, oh, okay. You then it helps you kind of understand a lot of other things that will come later. So that is the second thing, right? Just connect with your true nature.
Mm.
Amazing tools are available out there. And the third thing is, do the work, right? To create a healthy environment for yourself, your goals. Like, what is your authentic self? Like, what do you want to do in your life? What is your chief aim of your life? Identify these things. Like, for example, I'll ask somebody, how do you like to eat eggs? They have no clue, and they're 45 years of age. I'm like, that's why I try to like break a pattern, saying that how much we just, take on things and just, oh, my mom always made scrambled eggs. Okay, I understand your mother always made scrambled eggs, but what do you like? They'll be like, I don't know. I'll be like, go do this is the homework for today. I'll say, go do this and come back and tell me. So I think it really helps to then do that work. And then it is very difficult work, right? It's not for the faint hearted. Confronting the people you love, none of this is easy work. But the cost, if you don't do the work, is your
Mhm.
your life, you existing and not living a life on your terms. So you have to make a choice at some point. And entrepreneurs are, I like entrepreneurs because they like making decisions, because every day they have a lot of practice. Then for the if you want to be operate at the highest level as a human being, then you got to get rid of stuff that makes you less of a human being and more of a human doing, just doing what everybody else is saying.
Yeah.
Have to
Like,
be. Yeah, you have to get to that place.
that's beautiful. I love the fact that it's really internal work. It's the inner work that you're focusing on. And after you do that work, then you can really focus on what needs to be done to.
Yeah, Jen, believe it or not, I found it to be so surprising. Because when I was doing free sessions for Score nonprofit, where all these people have big entrepreneur ideas, will come. Oh my God, I can't even tell you. They would bring an emotional, they're having an emotional, this is the pattern I saw. Each one of them is having an emotional issue in their life. And then what they do is, they want to solve it for other people, and that is their business plan. I'm like, I listen, and then I say, you need to solve this in your life first. You don't need to go build this business for other people. And if you solve this for yourself, the desire to build this business plan goes away. But they don't know that that was driving that great business idea that they had. Because
Mm.
once I pull that linchpin, I'm like, now tell me, are you really interested in starting that nurse concierge business idea that you had because you couldn't take care of your mother in Spain? They're like, no. Yeah, why don't you work on, figuring out how you can provide some support if that is what is bothering you? It is so funny how we disguise, tell the stories, and we try to avoid doing that work.
Yeah.
That is why I said this work is not for the faint hearted.
Oh
It's for
my
the
God.
courageous people.
Yes, yes. Wow. So much insight and value that you just shared with us. So, before we close, I do have a question for you. Because I
Sure.
mean, you shared so much insight, even your own experience. So, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and open of your own experience. You shared it so wonderfully. But the question, looking back, what is something you wish you had known earlier in your life that you would tell your younger self, little Roan?
What would I tell my younger self?
Yeah.
Well, what I would tell my younger self is to be more courageous, be more disruptive. I don't think I know, like, because I was suppressed so much in India, I had like extreme levels of disruption that could have, I could have caused
Mhm.
so much chaos. And out of that chaos, maybe so many other changes could have happened. But again, limitations were there. So I would tell my younger self, be disruptive, question, continue to be courageous, and like, don't think this is the end of the world just because you did some mistake or something that you couldn't understand happened to you. And one thing that I really lacked, as a younger self, was I didn't know a lot of things, like coaching and all existed. I didn't know that at all. And that's why today also, like, with my content and with my work, there is no awareness that help is available.
Mhm.
Ask for help. And I didn't ask for help. As you might have seen, I was so isolated and in my own world that I just wanted to kill myself. And I know a lot of people have reached that brink. Some people in my own life have taken that decision. I've lost loved ones because they decided to end their life. But help is out there, and we have to ask help from the right people.
The right people. Yeah, I completely agree. Before we close, is there anything else you would like to share in closing?
Yeah, I think because your podcast, Sacred HERstory, it's what we need to hear, right? We need to, we don't need more his stories, we need her stories.
Stories, yes.
And for women, this is my request, this is my sincere desire, because I see a lot of women who are struggling with all the you know unnatural expectations placed upon them. We
Mm,
are not born, like, I would like to tie it back to serve a household as a girl child. We are not here just born to serve a man as his wife. We are not here to serve our siblings as a sister. We're not here to serve, only serve our children. These are all very utilitarian roles. This is not who you are, even though the world tells you this is who you are, this is your whole essence. No, it is not. Your your real essence is just life itself, and it has nothing to do with all these roles, identities, these lies. I want every woman, no matter where she is, in which stage of her life, to have that, to have that courage, because I know women are courageous by nature, because it shows up in so many areas of their life when they're fighting for a loved one or doing something for their loved ones. But I want her to use that same courage for herself too. Activate it, you
mm,
know? Yeah, activate that courage, go after, realize your true nature, and then live your life, because courage looks very different. In India it's different, right? In Iran, courage for a woman looks different. Courage for a woman in US looks very different. So please, 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 use that. You have power, activate it, use it, and only by using it you will, expand it. You will make that flame bigger.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much for more words of wisdoms from you, Roan. Thank you just for being a guest speaker here and letting us celebrate your truth, your love, your passion, and your wisdom. And beautiful souls, if today's story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that you're not alone in this path, I invite you to follow and subscribe Sacred HERstory podcast. Also, if you would like to connect with Roan, her information will be in the description below. If you want to talk about anything, or if you're an entrepreneur and can use her insight, her information will be right there for you. And until next time, keep choosing yourself, keep walking your sacred path, and remember, you are Sacred Her, highly exalted rebel. It is saying yes to yourself and trusting your own inner wisdom.